Simply Cooking by MmmChef is brought to you in part by Findlay Foods, offering wholesale food distribution services in Ottawa, Kingston, and all points between since 1986.
I love a good burger and fry just as much as the next guy. Watch me put an Italian twist on a Canadian classic. Who doesn't love a great burger and fries? I am no exception. Today I'm going to be showing you my favorite way to eat a burger and fry and putting a twist on it in an Italian way with a gravy, turning that into a little bit of a poutine, and of course a little something green, a slaw to go with that. So, I mean, burger and fries is such a classic dish. I've been eating it my whole life. You can get veggie burgers and beef burgers and chicken burgers and salmon burgers and, you know, fries with gravy, fries with ketchup, fries with mayo. Everyone, especially here in Canada, loves a good burger and fry with their condiments. So I'm gonna start by showing you potato wedges. They take the longest. So I've got my oven set to 450, and I'm actually gonna be showing you also the air fryer today, because who didn't buy an air fryer sometime during the pandemic? I've got sweet potatoes and some red skinned white potatoes. I'm gonna start with my sweet potatoes, and I'm gonna bake those in the oven at 450 on this pan here. I like to cut my wedges right down the middle, and then in half again, and then in half again. So for each potato, you get 8 pieces. I like to coat them with olive oil and a little bit of salt. I've got some garlic powder as well. And these guys are gonna bake in the oven for about 18 to 24 minutes at 450. Put a little drizzle of olive oil on these guys. A little bit of that garlic powder I was talking about, and a nice generous pinch of salt. Let me get these in the oven. Next, I'm gonna work on my red skin white potatoes for my air fryer. What's great about the air fryer is that in the summer, you don't have to turn on the hot oven, and it doesn't impart as much heat. It's actually a lot faster, and it's also a really healthy way to get your French fry fix, because oven fries don't tend to have that same crisp as an air fryer fry. Air fryer fries taste like they've been deep fried without the deep frying. So that's what I'm gonna use for this today. What's my Italian twist, you ask, on a Canadian classic? Well, I'm gonna be searing my burgers in this cast iron pan, and then I'm actually gonna be making some crispy pancetta to go on my burger. And with the drippings of that, I'm gonna make the gravy. You know me, I like to use the whole animal. And if you've seen my episodes before, I make my own salami and pancetta and all that stuff. So I've got some leftovers from when I made salami this year that I'm gonna be using in this episode. So I've got my trusty air fryer. This is a drawer style air fryer. I have one at home that has a paddle and turns, but this one is great because you can just pop your potatoes in there real quick. And what's a really cool trick about doing wedges instead of fries is that if you have wedges and you've got this little round spot here, and that sits on the pan or inside your air fryer, you never have to flip them, because the air gets around and the bottom gets crispy and then the outside also gets crispy. I pop these in the air fryer, and I'm gonna grab my ground beef from the fridge. I've got this beautiful medium ground beef that I got from my local butcher. It's grass-fed, and it's from not far from here. I'm just gonna set this to the side and let it come to temperature for a minute. I've got some coleslaw ingredients, some non-traditional ones. I've got a little piece of cabbage here that I'm just gonna give a quick chop to. I just like to have something green and healthy to go with my burger. I've got that chopped. I've got a mango here. And I've got some green onion. I've got some apple cider vinegar that I'm gonna throw into the bottom of my bowl. Some salt, some garlic powder, this Dijon mustard that I've got, some olive oil, some pepper. Perfect, I've got a little dressing here. I'm going to put my cabbage. I'm going to quickly chop up my green onion and do my little mango nice and thin as well. You can use green apple for this, or you can leave the fruit out altogether if you're not someone who likes fruit in your coleslaw. I'm going to get this stirred up on the break, but first I want to show you how I form my burgers. So I'm going to get my pan nice and hot. I'm using a cast iron skillet so I can get that crisp on the outside of my burger. And I like to turn a pound into 6 burgers. So the way I do that actually is before I even touch the meat, I take my knife, cut it in half. Well, that's not that even, so let's make it even. So there, cut it in half, and then I turn each piece into 6, well, each piece into 3, sorry, which makes it 6, and then I have 6 even burgers. I form them, I make them nice and skinny, and I actually season it with just salt and garlic powder, a lot of seasoning on the outside. I'll show you an example just so that you can get an idea while my pan gets really hot. But that's a lot of seasoning. I do it on the one side, then I'll flip this over into my pan and get it nice and seared and flip it over. This way I don't have to put any flavor inside, it just sits on the outside. I'm gonna form up the rest of these burgers while my cast iron gets nice and hot, and I'm going to use a little bit of pork fat on the bottom of the pan before I sear the meat, and I'll sear them over the break, and we'll see you after.
This program is brought to you in part by Findlay Foods, providing wholesale food distribution services including gluten-free, halal, kosher, and many other products in the Ottawa and Kingston areas.
Food and discussion go hand in hand. Join the conversation on Instagram at MmmChef. Send us your questions. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you like to make. Maybe even send a picture of your own culinary creations. Good food, bringing people together for centuries.
I just seared my burgers. They are beautiful. They're nice and crispy on the outside and probably medium on the inside. I'm letting them rest because when you cook meat at a high temperature, especially a beef or something, it's very important to allow it to rest because this allows the juices to be redistributed properly throughout the meat. And then when you take a bite or you cut into it, you don't have juices running everywhere. I also zhuzhed up that coleslaw and gave it a nice good stir so that it's marinating and getting delicious for us. So if you've seen a past episode of mine or last season's pork episode, you'll know that in my Italian family, we buy a whole pig every year and we make things like salami, suppressata, sausages for the grill, and we use the whole pig. We spend a few days cutting it all down, processing it, and then we cure some of the products in my nonna's cantina. So today, my Italian twist on this poutine / frites et sauce, which is fries and gravy, is pancetta and pork products in my gravy. So I have this beautiful pork belly that we cured back in January. It's the underside of the pig, and it's called pancetta. It's been cured, which means it's been covered in salt, allowed the liquids to come out of it, and then cured in my nonna's basement just like a sausage. You could eat this just like this. It's nice and salty, but I'm actually going to sear it in my cast iron pan after taking out the burgers and having all of that delicious flavor right in the pan. I'm going to get these pieces of pancetta nice and crispy so that my gravy has little pieces of bacon flavor all throughout it. How delicious is that? I'm gonna turn my cast iron pan on to medium high-ish and let it get a little bit hot. This is another one of those products. At the end of cutting down the pig with all the leftover pieces of fat, I actually render it down, and I use this all throughout the year to cook with. It's great for searing eggs, it's great for sauteing, and it is delicious. And this way we don't waste any of the animal. This is a traditional cooking oil or fat to use. So what's great about a cast iron is that it has iron in it and it imparts iron right into the food. So that is great for us women. And what's also neat about cast iron is you don't wash it. You actually just rinse it in water and give it a good scrub. Dry it off really, really well. And then you do something that's called seasoning. You get some oil or some fat and you rub it in all around it. And the more you season it, the more crispy your food gets and the more delicious and non-stick the pan gets. So my fat is nice and melting, so I'm gonna add this pancetta in there. And while this gets nice and crispy, let me just find something to stir that with. While this gets nice and crispy, I'm going to, my wooden spoon. While this gets nice and crispy, sorry, I just repeated myself. I'm going to talk about gravy and sauce and poutine. So my favorite thing about fries and gravy is the ketchup, so I'll show you that in a minute. But as I mentioned before, I'm not really a poutine girl. I always wanted fries with a side of gravy. So this is just taking that concept up to a next delicious level. I've got some cornstarch here that I'm gonna add to my pan drippings. That pancetta is already getting nice and crispy. I'm gluten-free, so I like to use cornstarch, but you could use flour here or any other type of starch to help thicken your gravy sauce. I'm not adding any salt to this gravy, and that's because there's already lots of salt in the flavor of the pancetta. This is another product. So at the end of processing the pork, we actually cut down all the bones and I turn it into bone broth. And I keep this frozen in my freezer all year and use it for applications like this. My cornstarch has cooked down nicely. It's kind of disappeared and been cooked in the fat. So now it's time for me to add my liquid. Those little chunks you see are actually just a little bit more fat and the collagen that is solidified in this really intense bone broth. I'm gonna allow this to simmer, meld together and get all flavorful. And I'm gonna make my favorite part, which is the ketchup. So ketchup is my favorite thing. And if you saw last season condiments, oops, we had beach up. And I even made aioli, which would be great additions to this burger bar. But I want a twist on a classic ketchup, so I'm gonna make you a healthy version. I've got 2 little cans of tomato paste here. You may have seen tomato paste in a tube like this. You can use this as well, but I chose a can. It's just tomato paste, no salt or anything else in there. I'm gonna add that to the bottom of my bowl. What's different than this ketchup is it's not as sweet as a traditional ketchup. It's much healthier for you, and that means you can eat much more of it. I've got some apple cider vinegar, which gives it that sweet and tart. That's about a cup of tomato paste with about 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. My trick is a little tiny pinch of Dijon mustard. That's not in a traditional ketchup, but it's in mine. And maple syrup, about the same amount as the apple cider vinegar so that you can balance those flavors. And then for this, I give a very generous pinch of salt and some of that garlic powder that I used on the outside of the burgers earlier. I'm going to whisk this up. And it becomes nice and thick like a traditional ketchup. So at this point, some people may take this and put it into a pot on the stove, allowing it to simmer just a little bit. But I actually really enjoy my ketchup raw like this. It's nice and thick, ready for me to dip my fries in. And ooh, my gravy, check that out. It's thickened up really nicely. The cornstarch has given it some body. And when I pull away, you can see that it's nice and thick. I'm gonna get this off the stove and get all my burger fixings together, take my fries out of the oven, and when we come back from the break, we're gonna set up our burger bar and poutine and fries and sauce bar. We'll see you then.
Be sure to follow Daniela on Instagram at MmmChef for all the latest posts, including behind-the-scenes looks of the Simply Cooking set and some delicious culinary creations that will definitely make you hungry. After all, we do eat with our eyes.
Look at my beautiful burger bar I have all set up. I've got some of my burger toppings here. My burgers are still resting, my coleslaw, some fresh cheese curds that I'm gonna be using for the poutine in a few minutes, and my ketchup that is so nice and thick and holds up. And my gravy. It is nice and thick and ready to go. It's on low and ready for me to use it. You know, fries and gravy or poutine or all of that stuff is so Canadian. And what is better to go with a burger than some aged Canadian cheddar? So I'm just gonna finish up slicing this cheddar to add to my board. And look at that crumble. You can tell it's been aged when it crumbles like that. It's been aged for 3 years and is nice and fermented. And the difference between a cheese like this and these cheese curds is that the cheese curds are fresh baby cheese, basically. And this is kind of like a grandma cheese because it's been aging for a while. I'm dairy-free, so I won't be adding this to my burger, but I know my friends that are coming over would definitely love that. So my sweet potato fries and my white potato fries in the air fryer have beeped right before I got back from the break. So I'm gonna show you how to make a poutine and my patate frites with sauce, which is just fries and gravy. So I've got my red-skinned white potatoes, and I'm gonna turn these guys into the poutine. So I'm just gonna put a nice little handful on my plate there. And then when my friends get here, I'll make them all a poutine as well. So we'll just keep these warm in the air fryer. I'll grab my other plate. And I've got my nice caramelized sweet potatoes. Check out that brown. So the oven did that for me. The air fryer made these guys look like they've been deep fried. They have a really nice crispy texture and nice browning on the outside. This was about 18 minutes in the fry setting on the air fryer. And this is my sweet potatoes that were baked at 450 in the oven for about the same amount of time. So the sweet potatoes is what I'm going to turn into just fries and gravy on the side. Let me pop these back in to stay warm until my friends get here. And so I'm gonna make this one the traditional poutine. So cheese curds. Cheese curds are my husband's favorite food. We have St. Albert cheese curds in Ontario, and these guys actually come from a local dairy farm here. We are in Quebec filming this show right now, close to Ottawa. And my nice thick gravy with those crispy pancetta pieces is just perfect. Give this a little drizzle on top of my curds. I'm gonna get that gravy right on top of the cheese to allow it to melt as much as possible so we can get that string. What's cool about the cheese curds is if they melt enough, they will string. And the fresher they are, the more they squeak. So a lot of people call cheese curds squeaky cheese because the fresher it is, when you take a bite, they actually squeeze on your teeth. Now I'm gonna make the sweet potato with a side of gravy, my favorite way to eat fries. I don't need the cheese. Look at that gravy. Looks fantastic. And the smell, I wish you guys could smell it. Leave these to the side and let this cheese curd melt. So why did I want to do a burger and fries episode? Well, actually, my best friend Caitlin, who lives in Michigan, was helping me with ideas for season 3. And she said that when she thinks of Canada and she thinks of our food and cuisine, and the thing that she craves the most would be a poutine or fries or gravy or a burger. Because we are a condiment country. We love our ketchup, we love our mayo and our mustard and our aiolis. And we actually love fries so much that our food trucks here in Canada are actually called chip trucks. When I was traveling in the United States, some of my friends were like, what's a chip truck? Well, in Canada, all of our food trucks pretty much serve fries. So, I grew up with chip trucks. You would go down to the chip truck and order a small or medium fry for a couple dollars when you were a kid, and they would pour gravy on. I would always ask them to give me the container of fries halfway through, so I could squeeze as much ketchup as I wanted in the middle of the container and then give it back to them, and they would fill it back up with the fries and the gravy. There's no better summer childhood memory for me than going to the chip truck in the hot heat of the summer and eating fries that burn your mouth with tons of ketchup, and then having your mom or whoever take you for some ice cream after the chip truck. Anyway, so that's my story why I decided to do a burger and fries episode. And then I got to thinking about it, and I love burgers so much. I would say it's something that I crave more often than any other food. So I had to do it. So I can't wait anymore. I'm gonna build my burger. So I've got some regular gluten buns here for some of my clients. Not clients, some of my friends that are visiting, which are actually clients because this house is owned by a good friend of mine who is also a client. And they're gonna make their burgers on the regular bun, but I'm gonna make my burger with a lettuce wrap. Lettuce wraps are something that have been really popular in the last few years. If you don't eat gluten, you could totally buy some gluten-free burger buns, or I've made them from scratch before. But when I use a lettuce bun for my burger, that means I have extra room in my tummy for more French fries, and I always want more fries. So I've got this beautiful Boston lettuce. It's got a nice hold to it, and they're nice and big leaves, which work well as a bun, but you could use iceberg or romaine or whatever lettuce you have. So I'm gonna start with some ketchup because that's my favorite. You know what, I can't even wait. I might have to, nothing like ketchup and fries. So yummy. So I've got some ketchup. I love some raw onion. A nice slice of tomato. Speaking of tomatoes, very Canadian and also Italian. So, that fits in well with the Canadian-Italian theme we've got going on here. You've got hundreds and hundreds of varieties of tomatoes, just like you do apples, and they're all great for different reasons. And here in Canada in the summer, we grow great tomatoes. So just like in Italy, we've got an abundance of tomatoes and we're making sauce and ketchups and things at the end of the summer. Our climate here in Canadian summer is the same, and we get such an abundance of tomatoes. This one is a beefsteak tomato. I'm gonna grab one of my cooked burger patties and my delicious coleslaw. Some people might wanna eat this coleslaw on the side, which I probably will too, but the sweetness from the mango, the tartness from the apple cider vinegar, the sharpness of the little green onion is just gonna go so nicely with the medium fat content inside my burger meat. You could of course do this with chicken burgers, pork burgers, salmon burgers, veggie burgers, or you could even just make a sandwich with all these ingredients without putting the meat in there. I'm gonna put my lid back on this guy. I've got my beautiful burger here. I'm gonna actually cut it in half. Check that out. Yum-y. I've got this burger. I've got my poutine for all my friends with the cheese curds. I've got my sweet potato wedges with my gravy, and I've got my ketchup. And I gotta add some extra ketchup. Thank you for joining me on my Canadian Italian burger and fry escapade. I can't wait. I have to take a bite. And wasn't that really simple?